Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Barclay Hagan. I am the Director of Client Care for OnPoint. And we've got Mike Pazinski here, who is going to be our presenter today. And at the end of the session, Mike will give you his email address for you to email any additional questions, but you'll also have my contact information, and my role as client care is to just help keep things moving and make sure that you have the resources you need when you need them. So feel free to contact me with questions or any scheduling needs at any time. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Barclay. So thanks for joining us. We chose this topic today to really, it's that time of year, and my PowerPoint's not responding, which, okay. We chose this topic because it's number one, it's that time of year. Everyone needs a 401k report or some kind of census reporting. But also the topics here, the topics around report designing and the things we're going to cover. When I was in the call center at Sage Timberline, this was the number one area. The things we're covering today were the number one areas that people called in about about custom reporting and the questions they had. So, and that's not changed. So we wanted to cover the most common, frequently asked questions. So we thought, well, what's the biggest value we can give you? We're going to go fast, out of respect for everyone's time. Everyone's so busy today. But what I really encourage you all to do is relax, sit back, drink a cup of coffee, eat lunch, whatever. I'd eat lunch, but it'd be ugly. If you want to take notes, great. However, what we're going to send you when we're finished, we're going to send you the recording of this session. We're going to send you the report design, as well as the PowerPoint. And also, you'll have my email address if you have, questions or whatever. And then like Barclay said, you'll have her email address as client care here at OnPoint, so that if you need immediate help and I'm booked out or something, we've got a deep pool of other Sage Timberline longtime consultants so that we can get you help. So the main thing is we're covering the things that are really relevant right now and wanted to get you the good stuff. So what we're going to cover today is how do you select the right tables for a report? All right. Number one question. We're gonna design the report in Sage 300 Report Designer. We're going to add date prompts, and then the number one question: what in the world is the lookup function? We're gonna cover that. Bottom line, all of us here, we've been in your shoes. We understand what it means to be able to get information out of Sage 300. We understand, your boss or your peers or somebody needs info, and you're charged to get that. And so we want to help you with some of the foundations here, so that you're better prepared, or you're prepared and empowered to get some of this stuff. So let's keep on going.
One other thing I'd like to add, Mike, is if there is the option to add a chat message within the webinar control panel. So if you have any questions along the way, like Mike said, we're moving quickly. We may not have time for them, but I can certainly follow up with you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Barclay. Please, we encourage you to ask the questions. We will follow up with you. We'll answer your questions, or everyone needs to know how to do this. So we're gonna do a 401k report, right? We're gonna have the employee, we're gonna have the checks, the check gross, we're gonna have 401k withholding, and we're gonna have 401k deduction. All right, that's gonna be our report. We have to step back and say, well, how is payroll information stored in the Timberline database? And I'm giving away my age, but Sage 300 CRE, how's payroll information stored? So payroll all revolves around a check. All right. When payroll is when time is entered, we are creating a check. All right. When payroll is processed, we process a check. And for those who are involved in payroll, you know that check has statuses, right? Depending on where you're at in the payroll process. Well, that check has parts to it. All right. There are check pays: regular, overtime, double time. There are check taxes, unfortunately, federal, state, all right? There are check deductions, 401k deductions, health deductions, direct deposit, all right? And then there are check fringes. Some people call them matching. If you have a matching 401k, if your company matches or pays health, if there are union benefits, these are things that are added to a perhaps to a check, but or they're just derived or calculated as part of a check, and maybe not even part of the check gross. All right. So these are the 4 things that are calculated as part of a check that we have to consider when we're doing payroll reports. All right. The main thing to consider here is there's one check with one or many pays, one or many taxes, one or many deductions, one or many fringes. That's really the core of this conversation. Well, how is that relevant? Well, what we're talking about today is in our report, we're going to list an employee with the employee's checks. And what we're going to want to know is what are the 401k deductions and what are the 401k fringes for that check. Now think about the way a report processes. It's going to list the employee and the check, and then it's going to go, hey, is there any 401k deduction? Well, it's going to look at, for that specific check, it's going to look at the deducts. Whoops, I hit the wrong key. But it's going to look and it's going to go, wait a minute, I've got a whole list of deductions on that check. Well, how does it know which one is 401k and put that one on the check? And then when it gets to the fringes, it's going to go, hey, which fringe do I need to grab? So think of these as like Excel spreadsheets. Here's a spreadsheet of the checks, and here's a spreadsheet of the deductions, and a spreadsheet of the fringes. It's going to go to the first row on the spreadsheet and grab the check. It's going to look over at this long spreadsheet of check deductions, and it's going to go, which one do I grab for the 401k on that specific check? You know, because there's all sorts. I need to quit touching my mouse. There's all sorts of deductions here. We just wanted to zero in on the 401k deduction, 401k fringe. That's the problem to solve, okay? So what we've just done is we've defined, number 1, 3 of the tables that are on a report: the check deduct, and the check fringe, among other tables. Those are 3 of the tables we're going to need on our 401k report. And it's very important. We're also making a report design decision. We want to process all checks and then include any deductions for 401k if they exist, and include any fringes for 401k if they exist. Is that a rule? Is that a report writing rule? Not at all. That's just, you know, we had to make a decision on a report. What do we want to do? Well, let's show all the checks, and we'll show deductions and fringes if they exist. All right. That's just a decision we made. Did we have to? No. We could say, well, let's process all the deductions, and then we'll show fringes if they exist. All right. Well, us as report designers, we have to ask a lot of questions. What if you had a check that fringes weren't calculated right last time, and the only thing on the next check was a fringe, not a deduction, because we had to just do an update or calculation or some sort of a catch-up? Well, it wouldn't show the fringe if we started here with checks, and that's what we processed. We have to think about these things when we're thinking about what record do we process in its entirety, where do we start? We're safe if we start with a check and then look for deductions and look for fringes, all right? For anybody who's heard about the processing record and Sage Report Designer, the processing record is the record of the table that's processed in its entirety. The report goes through and reads every record in that table, top to bottom, unless it's filtered out. But that's the processing record. What do I read in its entirety? And we're going to read the checks. All right, next problem to solve. How are we going to know when we read a check which of these little rascals is the 401k? How does the report know when it gets to this table which is the number 1, 401k, and number 2, 401k for that specific check? Well, we're going to introduce, and I'm sure you've heard of something called the key to the table. And don't ever think this. The key to the table is simply what makes each row of information unique, all right? What makes every row different from another row, all right? Think about the employee table. What makes every employee different from the other employees? It's the employee ID, all right? That's the key to the employee table. What makes each check different in the check table? Well, the key is the employee, the period end date, and the check sequence. Every check in the check table has a different combination of employee, period end date, and check sequence. No two checks have the same combination of those fields. And so you're going, oh, wait a minute, Mike, how did you know that? And I'll do this very quickly. Well, number one, years of doing this stuff, but originally I went to Report Designer, and I'm going fast. You've got this recording. I went to Report Designer, Tools, Available Fields, and I selected those three tables: check, check deduct, check pay, and I just printed them. And here's those printouts. Here's the PR check. And this is a hard rule. At the bottom of that check, go to the primary sort. Each table will have at least a primary sort. This one's got a primary, a secondary, a tertiary, and then other alternate sorts. It's what's in parens under the primary sort. That's the key. The key is what's in parens under the primary sort for each and every table. So Timberline's telling us that for the check, the key is the employee, period end date, and the check sequence. You've got to know that. When I first started report designing in the early 90s, I would write this out, and I'm going to show that to you, how I did that. For the check deduct, the key is the employee, period end date, check sequence. Then it's the deduction ID, union, local class. And it's something similar for the check fringe. So what I did for this presentation, and again, I realize I'm going very fast, but you've got the recording, is I wrote this out. And I wrote this out for many, many reports. And you know, whether I do this in my head or I do it on paper, it doesn't matter. I'm doing it. We're starting with the check. And I know the key to that record. And then I say, how am I going to know in the report to get the right deduction? How do you know that? Well, the key to that is the employee, period end date, check sequence, deduction ID, union local class. All right. Can I get there from here? That's the question. All right. I'm gonna go to the next slide. Well, I color coded this. Part of the key to the check deduct is the key to the check. So when I'm going, I got the check on the report, I go over to this other table and get the 401k, I can say, look at that 401k table with all this stuff in it for all these deductions for all the checks. Go to a row with the same employee, the same period end, the same check sequence as the check, and then hard code the deduction ID because I want 401k. And then in my report, I don't have union local class, so I'll put null values in there. I got it. I can get from my check to the check deduct. I can say, go from here to here, go look up a row of information with the same employee, the same period end, the same check sequence, hard code 401k, no, got it. I don't know if you ever heard a report designer go, can I get from here to here? That is exactly what they're thinking. Can I get there? That's the thought process they're going through. Same thing here. So when you're looking at this recording, if you can't sleep tonight, number one, you're welcome. This will help you fall asleep. But this is the concept that you've got to understand to do lookups. All right. So in this next slide, I did this to help you start to think about this, the way you'll write out this lookup formula, the syntax. You're going to go, all right, do a formula for the check deduct, and we're going to do it. Look up the 401k give me the employee off the check, give me the period end off the check, give me the check sequence off the check, hard code 401k, no, no, no. Boom, I've got my 401k amount. That's the lookup formula. And I won't pause for a whole long and ask questions and maybe do other examples. You know, we're going to rip through this and you've got the recording, but that everyone is the simple logic to a lookup formula. Everyone's going, what is he talking about? But that's the purpose then of the recording, and we wanted to just go through this and be respectful of everyone's time with the recording. And you've got this. All right, so putting this in, making it relevant to the report is going to read off the check. It's going to grab the employee, and we'll talk about where the name's coming from, and then the check date. It's going to grab the gross pay off the check, and we'll talk about that in a sec. And then it's going to do that lookup from the check deduct. Here's that report with the check deduction. It's going to go up here, and it's going to look that up with a formula, and it's going to go to the 401k match, and it's going to look that up with the formula. And that's it. I mean, that's literally it. So before we get into the report, this is the most important part of report designing, because in Report Designer, you have to know the tables you're going to use before you start the report. If you're taking any notes, this is the most important one. You have to know the report tables before you start. It's not like Crystal or other report designers. We're going to grab the employee name of the PR employee. We're going to grab the check date off the PR check. We're going to grab the check gross off the PR check. We're going to grab the 401k withholding off the check deduct and the 401k match off the check fringe. Again, you've got this recording, and I'm hoping you'll take this in steps, all right? But this is the most important part is you're designing a report. You would have started by penciling out this layout or in your head, and you're going, where's this going to come from? Where's this going to come from? Where's this going to come from? All right. And you would have ended up with this either on a napkin or in your head or even in Excel. Okay. So let's get into the software and do that. So we're in Report Designer. We're going to go File, New Design. And you know, you've probably written down these tables that you need. The Report Designer calls them records. That drives me crazy. These are tables, but that's neither here nor there. We know we're going to grab the PR employee. We know we're going to need the PR check, wherever you are. We need the PR check. Notice when I click them, they appear on the right. We need the check deduct, and we need the check fringe. Now, I've added them here. I need every table I need at this point, all right? And the value of what we've just gone through prepared me to get to this point, okay? Employee check, check deduct, check fringe. I hit okay. The next step is to tell the system the driving record, AKA what's the table that I'm going to read through in its entirety. And for all the right reasons, we said it's the check. So I'm going to go design. Where are you? It's been too long. Sort order. And then we're going to process all checks. That's the driving record. What are we going to drive through in its entirety? We could pick any of the tables, but I want to read all of the checks top to bottom. Okay. And then if you've been mucking around, always make sure your cursor is in row 4, column 1. And then the first field that's going to be on my report is the employee number, all right? So the rule is, whenever possible, grab your field from the driving record. So I'm on check. So I'm going to double-click employee number. And then I know that the employee name because we've already planned it and wrote it out. I know the employee name's on the employee table, so I'm going to click on index, double click on employee, and I'm going to grab the employee name. All right. And then the next field on my report is the check date, and we know that's on the check. So I'm going to double click check, and I'm going to grab the check date, and then I'm going to grab the gross amount of the check. Okay, and we've already penciled all this out, and we've looked at these available fields, and we've written down where this is. So once we get into clicking here, the brain pain is gone. We know where information's coming from. All right. So the next field then is the 401k withholding, and we know that's a formula. So I'm going to click on Tools, Formulas. I'm going to click on New. And then I'm going to type in the word lookup. That's a function, and open paren. And lookup is expecting a certain syntax, all right? And the syntax is, well, first of all, what are you looking up? Well, I'm looking up the amount of the check deduction. So if I hit index and I go to check deduct, I want the amount of that check deduct, and then comma, and then it says, well, what's the key? I need to know, remember that, all the check deducts? Well, I'm going to index over to the check. Well, the employee's off the check, and this is mindless because I've already penciled this out. Remember the employee period end rather check date. This is all mindless. You've already penciled this out, and then I've got a no value on union, local, class. Yes, I'm going fast, but I'm looking at my notes. Okay, and it's going to be 401k deduct. And I forgot to put in 401k. I got ahead of myself. And so when you're looking at the video, amount, employee, period end date, check sequence, deduction ID, union local class. Boom, one down. We'll do one more. Look up. And yes, I'm going fast for everyone's time, but I'm going to look up a fringe. I want that fringe amount. And the keys to that are the employee, period end date, check sequence, hard code the fringe ID, and then null values for union, local, class. So, and the point is here, by the time you get here, this is brainless. You've already penciled it out, all right? And it's going to be 401k fringe. And actually, you probably want to stay on the keyboard and use hotkeys and all that, but that's another day. Now I'm going to index over to my design formulas and grab my deduction, grab my fringe. Next step, we want to examine our print controls. So I'm going to go View, Print Controls. Print controls are saying, how often do I go out to the database, get a piece of information, and stick it on the piece of paper? So if I hit employee, I want to stick it on the piece of paper once per employee. Same with name. Check date, I want to do that once per check sequence as I do gross and deduction and fringe. Go out and get that information once per check sequence. That way, if I had multiple checks for one period end date, this will do it multiple for once per sequence. Next step is look at your line spacing. I do want double between employees, but between period end dates, I want single, and then everything below that, I do want single. All right. I'm not going to worry about page breaks right now. All right. Now, there's a rule, save and save often. And I'm going to say 401k. Actually, it's a good idea to put a special character in front of your custom designs so that they sort to the top, either an exclamation point or a pound sign, if they live in your report folder. So 401k report. All right, and then we'll do a quick test. I'm going to pick current for posted. We can hard code this, and then whether or not we're prompted, we can tell the design that as well. And then I'm going to get over to the 4-character employee IDs, which is where the values start. So we can see then for Lisa, we have gross pay, deductions, and fringes, and so we have values here. Now, it's the next thing you'll want to do then is go look at a couple of checks and validate the data here. All right, but we are returning data. So we have designed the report. Next step, we're going to put date prompts in. So we can do that. What we do first, step 1 in the date prompts, is we create the dates, and we'll make them required. All right, I'm going to double click. I'm going to create a field, and I'm going to make it a date. And we're going to have a description, and we're going to call it check date from. And again, you'll have the recording for this, and I'll go OK. And then I'll go create a field. I double click, create a field, and I'll go to, and that's a date. Okay. So I've created a couple fields. They're both dates. Next thing is I line them up so that they're aesthetically pleasing. The UI is nice. Boom, I got them in there. First step, create the prompts. Next step, create a formula to evaluate the prompts. My formula is going to be that in my case, that the check date, wherever you are, that the check date, and this is a syntax in Sage, is greater or equal to the from and the check date is less or equal to 2. And I know I'm going fast. Please kind of look over these recordings. Wake up, look them over again, practice, call me, email me, make sure you're good here, okay? The 2. I could have gone LE here as well. So my check date is greater than my from, and my check date prompt is less than my 2. And I have a naming convention. It's the condition check date. So I've created the prompt, and I've made a formula to apply data with some logic to the prompt, all right? Now, that's going to return a Boolean value. It's going to evaluate this, and it's going to return either a true or a false. It's going to say either these conditions exist, yes, or they don't, no. What do you do with that? Well, you say, when it's evaluating the checks, I'm going to say, only let records through when that condition is true. So picture the check. Come to the first check. The check date is greater or equal to check date from, and the check date is less than or equal to check date to. It's either a yes or a no. What we're doing right here is it says only allow checks in where that value is yes or true. Third step, three-step deal on prompts. Create the prompt, create a formula to apply data to the prompt values, and then create a condition to filter your data based on the return of that formula. All right, let's check it out. Save and saved often in Report Designer as we've come to know and love. And I'm going to grab my history, and let's just say 01/01/2000. I didn't pay close enough attention to the sample data. 12/31/18. Nothing to print. You know what I'm going to do is a big swipe here. 04/16/61. That's not my birthday. 12/31/2020. in case anybody wants to think about a birthday present. Barclay's going, my ixnay on the Earth Day date. Let's do 15. So let's just do 03/01/15 to 03/31/15. All right, nice test there. So clearly we're limiting our data to March of 15 now. Those date prompts are working. And we got to get down to where there's relevant data in here. I know I'm going fast. That's what the recording's for. That's one of the number one things we got when we're teaching at TUG and Insights and Summits and all that is we went too fast. But again, times have changed and we're trying to be really respectful of your all's times. So
hey, Mike, can you show them how to add it to the menu?
Oh, right at noon. Yes, that they need. Yeah, everyone needs to know that. So you've designed this report. Thanks, Barclay. That's Barclay's role, is to make sure consultants are doing their jobs. So thank you. So we've designed this report. Let's hang it on the menu. All right. I've saved it. Let's hang it on the menu. Now you would have saved it to your server, and so it's centrally located. I haven't, but now we're going to hang it on the Sage menu. So I'll pop over to payroll. To put it on the menu, you're going to go to reports within the module, and you can, well, be careful if you do this in inquiry in manager. I'm sorry, an inquiry manager. Is that it, manager? I would go into the module and do this. There's some gotchas if you don't. Go to payroll, go to report manager, and then go new. All right. And then the report name is whatever you want to call it, 401k report. Many companies will make a group called custom, but your groups are what they are, right? Whatever makes sense for you. Now, be careful that the source is right. This is a TS report design. And then on the file name, go ahead and click in there and then click on the list. And then on mine, I will browse out to it. And mine's under documents, 401k, pound 401k report. All right. And then I'm going to hit OK. And then reports, custom 401k. Tips and tricks. Ask your users if they will typically run it on unposted or on posted, or if they want the option to do both. And you can set that up as defaulting and also on whether or not to prompt. That can make it a lot more user-friendly, and you can try to zero in and tighten it up so they don't make mistakes. And then a lot of companies will set up a report folder called being tested, and the report designers will ask the requester to test it before they move it out of testing into production, so to speak. And that forces the user to test it, look at it, and make sure that their expectations are met. And that simply protects them, it protects you, and then whoever's making decisions based on that report. 9 out of 10, that's not a big deal. 1 out of 10, that can save somebody's bacon, The other thing is you don't want to forget about security. Every report then, you have to consider Sage security on who can access that report and run it. That's always a consideration to add the report to the menu and then go modify Sage security. So yeah, thanks Barclay. All right, so we have went through selecting the tables. We've designed the report in lightning speed. We've added date prompts. We've added the lookup function and gone through that in painful detail, but what you have to know. And hey, bonus material, thanks. We've added it to the menu. And we've also, though, we've talked about, things that you have to think about: the driving record, print controls, line spacing, some of the major things that also have to be considered with report designing. If you watch this video and make listings of these things that we've talked about, you're going to get through 80 to 90% of the basic reports that you need to do. I promise you. All right, thank you. A link will be sent to you. If you need other information, we've got procedure guides that we've done by long-time Sage consultants that have worked with many of you, and they're there for you to help you with your company and streamline your procedures. It's there for you to take advantage of. We've got other many free recorded sessions like this one on Crystal, on Report Designer, on using MS Access with your Timberline data, about getting data out and using it. You've got my contact information here, as well as Barclays at Client Care. And thank you for being here. Barclay, do you have anything in closing?
No, just keep an eye out in your email. We'll get the report along with the recording out by the end of the week.
Very good. I wish we could see you in person. Look forward to the day when we're back seeing you all face to face. Hope everybody's safe and you and your families are safe and in a good place. Thanks for being here.
Okay.